Hello and welcome to the Performance Car Podcast by Motor Magazine. My name's Dylan Campbell.
And I'm Scott Newman.
Today we're in a Falcon XR8 Sprint. This car on the cover of our magazine, not this exact car, but a Falcon XR8 Sprint. This is part 2 of our XR8 Sprint podcasts. We're joined today by the owner, Norm. This is his personal car.
Hey guys.
Today we're discussing the ownership experience and why Norm is so passionate about Falcons.
Absolutely. So let's start with this car, Norm. This isn't the only Falcon you have. You are a bit of a Falcon fan, a bit of a Ford fan going way back. So let's tell us a little bit about your Ford experience, what the Falcon means to you, why you've been such a sort of diehard for the brand, and why you eventually came to buy one of the very last.
Yeah, look, grew up in a family, in a Ford family. Our first family car was an XY. V8 4-speed Falcon. Dad got that.
Dad was a car guy, was he?
Dad was, look, he loved motor racing and loved his Fords and that. And we grew up watching the Australian Touring Car Championship together and went to Sandown a lot. And it was a family thing. Dad and I would watch the car together and take it out driving, and he'd go through the bottle shop and always have to do a bit of a squeal out of the driveway from the bottle shop. But yeah, it was just a family thing.
Sounds like a cool dad.
Yeah, it was really good. Like, that was dad's son bonding time. So we grew up and got an XD S-Pack Falcon was our next family car after that. And yeah, just loved the car. My first Falcon at 18 was a XC Falcon GS, V8 4-speed as well. So
lovely.
At 18, that was the dream car, and yeah, XCs were really popular back in the mid-80s, and from that point onwards, just had XB GTs, XYs, lots of AUs, FGs, BAs, BFs, and I got my toy AU Ute as well at the moment, so yeah.
Mighty AU. So when did you first hear about the Sprint? What was the decision to go, hey, I need to get myself one of these last sort of hero models?
Yeah, for me it was, last ever Falcon, which was probably an emotive decision to buy one. I think also too, it ticked so many boxes for me with my maturing tastes, I guess. I love the FPV brand and love the GT brand itself, but I always thought I love the understated styling, and I love C63s and that style of Euro, the velvet sledgehammer, understated but overpowered kind of car. And I kind of was stargazing about what kind of Falcon I'd have if it was the last one ever, and it was like a GTE style Falcon or a G8E or something like that. And then when the Sprint came along, and it was pretty much exactly how I would have done a car as my last Falcon, I had to have one.
It's interesting because you say that, because they made a very conscious decision, the Sprint guys. We had Justin Capiccioni on our last podcast, but they made a very conscious decision whether to go sort of boy racer, wings and flares or whatever, but then they looked at what people were actually doing to their Falcons, their fans, and they were going, despoilering them, going a bit sleeper. So I think they really tapped into the market of guys like yourself that want that performance but don't want to necessarily have a V8 supercar lookalike.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's two ways to go, but for me anyway, it was just a no-brainer. The car just ticks all the boxes in terms of styling and the big brake package, and obviously Miami under the bonnet. It, as a V8 lover as well, and I just love this engine. It's just an amazing engine.
Is this your first Miami, or you'd had
it is my first Miami, and I just, such a shame that the engine has to stop with this car. It just hasn't seen anywhere near its potential, in my opinion, and I just would love to have seen it exist.
In a Mustang?
Or in a Mustang would be perfect. It would be a great Mustang engine.
I was thinking the other night, actually, that this is a pure coincidence, but both DC and I are from Falcon families as well. Dylan, you want to talk a little bit about your history with the Falcon? Your old man had one of the great Falcons.
Yeah, it's funny that we all sort of guided by the purchasing decisions of our parents. My old man had an EL XR8 and then had an AU XR8 with the biplane rear wing, if anybody can remember that little black wing on the double one. And then substantially upgraded to a T3 TE50 with the 5.6 litre stroked Windsor engine. 250 kilowatts was a lot back in the early 2000s. Not a huge amount these days, but particularly compared to the mighty Sprint here. But yeah, definitely come from a Falcon family and very fond of cars like this. So I can absolutely empathise with Norm for sure.
Absolutely, I'm similar. Like, you know, it's not something that's necessarily a conscious decision, because my dad wasn't a huge car guy or anything, but my brother's first car was like an XD or an XE. We had an XE wagon, I think, growing up, and then I remember when my dad bought one of those early 90s Fairlanes. What were they called? N something? I don't remember. But they had a digital dash and everything, and when I was like 10, that was the coolest thing in the world. And I learned to drive in my formative years in an EL Sapphire, and got away with many things that I probably shouldn't have done in that car.
It's amazing what you used to be able to get away with.
Yeah, it certainly learnt a bit about sudden onset oversteer in that car in the wet. So there was a few moments where, I don't know, probably youthful reactions saved me, and then my brother got an XR6, an ED XR6 wagon. Like, it's one of those things, like, we haven't necessarily been a typical Ford family, but I guess that speaks to the strength of the Falcon. Is if you wanted a dependable, reliable, practical car, it's kind of, you got that or a Commodore. Like, you went one way or the other, which has sort of changed now, sadly, but I think we're all all our families have spoken to that. So how do you feel, especially as a Falcon fan? We're 12 months on now from the Falcon, and you talk with your mates who are also in the game. So what's the sort of vibe like? I imagine you're still sad about it, really.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one, because look, everyone loves, in my circle of friends, car friends, and people on the forums and that, everyone still loves the Falcon and loves what it represents. And it's funny now that it's gone that people start to think it becomes a bit hard to try and get your head around where to go from here, because that whole Falcons, that whole large sedan wagon style of vehicle, it's so versatile. And we look at our with the Mustang now, it's a great performance offering. It's great for two people, but for me with two kids, and Ashley and Kayla wanted me to say hi, so I had to mention them. For me, I couldn't make a Mustang work for me personally, because I want them to have room in the back to get in and out of the car and that. So no, it's hard, because look, I love Mustang, and don't get me wrong, I'd love to have a Mustang as well, but
well, it's an interesting point in that you and a lot of guys like you see them on the forums and whatever, and obviously Holden fans will be having a similar situation in a 6 months, 12 months time. There's nothing, obviously large car sales diminished massively, but there are still thousands and thousands of people out there that are buying V8 Commodores, V8 Falcons, that you can talk to that point, there's nothing necessarily out there that really ticks your boxes necessarily. Is there anything out there that really gets you excited?
Honestly, the car that gets me most excited at the moment is the C43.
But I mean, still, that's $100,000. It's double.
I know.
It's double a V8 Falcon or Commodore.
The Stinger, that will be very interesting where that goes as a car, and that's ticks all the boxes in terms of functionality and practicality.
Do you think the Blue Oval people will go for that similar mechanical offering, or is it just it doesn't have a Ford badge, not interested?
Look, there'll be elements of both. I mean, I'd ideally love to see, like, I wish that the Mondeo Sport was an option to come here with the all-wheel drive and the bigger motor and that, and I'd still, if they brought out a decent Mondeo or Fusion or Mondo, whichever way they want to go with name, that mid-CD class vehicle that was all-wheel drive and 250, 260 kilowatts, something like that. Like, I'd look very seriously at that, because I'd love to stay in, like, I'm a die-hard Ford person, so my first shopping preference would be a Ford. But beyond the four-door sedan thing, it gets hard. And even like a C63 S Estate, what a cool car that is.
It's a bit of a different price tag, isn't it?
It is, but it's like, I just love that whole the sedan wagon functionality with all that performance. It's like it does so many things.
What have been some of your favourite Falcons over the years? What have been some of the things that have really connected with you? What were, if you got the lottery win and you can build your Blue Oval garage, what have been some of the models over the years that have really ticked your boxes?
Well, look, Probably the iconic one's the Phase 3, GTHO Phase 3, just because of what it represented. It was the pinnacle of the homologation specials for Ford. Lucky enough, my best mate Chris has got one, and it's just a fantastic car. And
You driven it?
Yep.
And what's give us a taste, because it's a rare opportunity for most people. What's a Phase 3 like to drive?
Yeah, it's rough and makes all the right noises. And people talk about, they went great in a straight line and they were terrible everywhere else. But for their time, they were a very, very good car. And, they stopped, and for what they were relative to their time, they would, and you'll be surprised, they actually do steer okay. Like, they're not the bucket of bolts that people make them out to be. They do actually point and steer very, very well for what they are. And
but you wouldn't want to do a lap time in one?
No, no. You get spoilt now. You drive this. I mean, you could punt this around with your eyes closed and go faster and probably around Sandown than in a Phase 3. But, I try to judge things relative to the time that they were around, rather than, it's pointless me saying what's it like compared to a Sprint, because it's chalk and cheese. But this is 2016 and GTHO Phase 3 is 1971. So
have there been any other models that have really ticked your boxes over the years? 'Cause everyone's got different tastes.
Yeah, look, I can't honestly say there's been other models that have really grabbed me. XB GT was a great car, and that, once again, very nice car, and that was a refinement. XD, I mean, there was a lot of attachment to XD and XE because of Dick Johnson and the Group C racing, so they had an affinity with that. Since then, my FG was a great XR6. That was a great car, and that was really a very, very nice car to own. The BA XR8, everyone much maligns the 5.4, but I loved that car. It had presence. It had, it went pretty well. Never had any issues with it. It was a great car. So I can't honestly say I've had bad experiences with any of my Falcons. So that's why it's really hard trying to look forward from that. And it's how do you replace that kind of a vehicle? So yeah, it's a tough one. I'm glad I got this, for 4 years. But you want to remain relative and progressive as well. So in 4 years' time, I have to make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, DC? What Falcon really tickles your fancy over the? If you could add one to your garage alongside the little 86, what would you?
If I could add any Falcon in my garage,
Yeah,
it probably would be the AU3 T3 T50, because in blueprint, I would have that car.
Because it's interesting, we've come up, a slightly different generation in that we came up through, I guess, V8 supercar era. So the EBs and sort of the ELs were our thing, rather than the XYs and the XCs, etc., like that.
Well, I was a little baby when XY was around, so I'm not. But yeah, like late 70s is probably when I can honestly remember motor racing the most. Probably Bathurst 77 is probably my first recollection of it, and watching Moffat win in the 1-2 Bathurst. So
yeah, absolutely.
XCs or XB GTs as XCs.
Whereas for me, the first memories were kind of like early John Bow sort of things, 92, 93, 94. I must have been 6 or 7 or something. I was sitting on the couch watching early Bathursts and things like that. So I guess those cars are sort of resonate. Although I've had an eye on late FPVs lately.
Yeah.
Like an FG2 FPV, as a second-hand car, it looks like a really cool thing. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think there's some appeal in an original BA GT as well.
Do you reckon that'll be worth money?
Certain models will be, I think, like a BA GT.
But I guess the easier one would be an GTF. Can you ever see an FPV GTF being worth, whatever, like 150 grand, 200 grand?
A GTF, it is the final FPV model, but then it was made by Ford as well, so it is kind of tricky to know which ones are the cars to sort of nab up now.
Yeah.
But that's the thing with purchasing cars like that, you never really know, and sometimes you're surprised.
Yeah, you want to know really. Well, let's talk about that briefly. What is behind, while we're on the Falcon podcast, what do we think is behind the strange and bizarre cult rise of the AU Falcon? You've just bought one yourself, Norm, maybe you can speak to it. Did that play a part in your purchasing decision, the fact that AUs have gone berserk?
I just think it's a cool car. It's going to be like one of those, I think AU was such that everyone just blamed it for everything, but it's just going to be one of those cars. It's just cool to own an AU.
I suppose it's so different, because why it was so maligned, and there's one just right over there.
Yep. You don't see many of those these days.
No. It was so maligned at the time, but I suppose that's its point of difference now.
It is. It's
Really?
just something different, because that's where I think Falcon will go now, is people go, like everyone loves GTs. You turn up to a car show and there's all the lights, beautiful GTs, all concourse restored or over restored, or however you want to look at them. But
Well, that's the irony, isn't it? Everyone's made fake GTs. So then if you've got like a basic GS now, or a Fairmont, XY Fairmont or something, you've probably got a really, really rare car, because a lot of them have been turned into hot rods.
yeah, well, that's right. So it's cool now to own something a little bit different.
Absolutely.
I think that AU as well, part of the theory has to be it was the unloved car.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It was this really unpopular car for its styling mostly, and its ergonomic quirks.
We joked that Mercedes copied them with the.
Well, the CLS.
With the CLS, yeah.
CLS. And there's
Yeah,
another car
see.
recently that looks like a AU Falcon as well. But I mean, it's funny that the AU Falcon's Doing Incredible Things Facebook page, which I think has driven
That's
a lot of that.
so funny, that
If
page.
you haven't checked it out, go on Facebook, look at AU Falcons Doing Incredible Things. You're guaranteed to laugh. And it started out as kind of irony, making fun of the poor AU Falcon.
Yep.
But the flip side of that is that AU Falcons can do incredible things.
Yeah.
Then they're well built and they're tough and they're reliable and they're rugged. So it sort of extols its virtues at the same time.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, people are talking about buying AU Falcons again with 250, 300,000 kilometres on the clock and not having really to do anything to them, and they just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Like
Long live the
Mine's
Barra.
done that. It's just one of those things. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's actually turning into a legend just through it's morphing into something that it never was.
the internet has made the AU a legend.
Yeah, it has.
Who would have ever thought that?
It's a cult car.
Back in the day. If you've got an AU out there, especially one with like that optional tray table that went over the gear stick,
Rare.
let us know.
Executive pack.
Yeah, executive pack, that's right. So,
AU Falcon Forte, you watch champagne colour. One day that car will be worth $100,000.
absolutely, yeah. Well, if you've got one, tuck it away in the shed now. So I guess, any final thoughts to wrap up on the Falcons? Well, I guess we'll talk about the Sprint actually. What do you like, and is there anything you don't like about the Sprint, Norm? You've had it now for, I suppose, 6 months, 12 months?
Yep.
Have you found the experience? Is it what you expected?
Look, it's everything. Look, it's done everything I wanted. I've been realistic about expectations and stuff like that. And look, you can go on forever about trying to, I wish it had this, or I wish it had that, and look at this.
Flu and
Yeah, well, that's right. Like, you look at all the new cars now with everything in them, and like, that's great, but it's just, I was realistic about it, and there's nothing about it that's disappointed me at all. The power is just, I tell you now, you haven't lived until you've owned a Miami-powered Falcon, or at least driven one significantly, because it is just something to behold. The performance of this engine. So that's been a real feature for me, is just how well these things go.
First thing, we talked about that in the other podcast with Justin, in that everyone gets fired up about performance times, and magazines did this and I did this and old mate Bob did something else. But like you say, it doesn't really matter, does it?
No.
Whether this car is a 14 or a 12 or whatever,
Yeah.
it's still a stupidly fast car.
Exactly right. And like, the difference between going super fast, like if you're chasing a time and stuff like that, it can be just millimeters of grip or whatever. The difference between doing 4.6 seconds 0 to 100 or 5.1 is really just, it's almost splitting hairs.
Although, if I'm right, you were the man who performance tested the Sprint for Falcon forums and made us look extremely silly.
Well, that wasn't my intention at all. But and to be fair to you guys, you obviously had probably your hands tied a bit behind your back with a slippery track that you're working with. That made it hard for you.
Thanks for that. Thanks for being diplomatic. So
no, it's true. It's reality, because I mean it is what it is, and I was lucky enough to have a whole day with both the Sprint 8 and the fantastic Sprint 6. So I had the opportunity to go backwards and forwards and just keep playing with stuff and learn the cars and that. So yeah, I was lucky like that, and there was an advantage in being able to do that. But yeah.
Just to give some quick context, we've obviously struggled to ever match the sort of official figures of Sprints, and then Norm borrowed the cars off Ford for a review for the Falcon Forums website and managed to match Ford's claims. So we clearly need to employ him as a performance tester, because he's better at it than us. So
Thank you.
that stung, that hurt. But did you ever think about the Sprint 6, or was it always the V8?
Nah, it was always the V8.
Yeah.
Look, it didn't matter which one was faster. It was always about the V8, because I just wanted to have one last V8.
Excellent. Okay. Well, any further thoughts, Dylan?
No, not really. I mean, we all love the Falcon, no matter what it is. It's at the end of the day, it's they go fast, they sound good, and to some extent, that's all that matters. And they don't make them anymore either. So
that's right. I think regardless of our professional responsibilities, and hopefully we are objective, and when we do a review and everything, we were both really, really sad when the Falcon, the end of the Falcon production happened, and it sort of snuck up on us, and you realise that. We're lucky we got to ring up and go, hey, can we book this car for a review or a test? And then suddenly it hit you. It's like, wow, we can't do that. We're never probably going to drive a Falcon anymore, really, in a professional sense. So it's a very sad end to a long, historic chapter at Australian manufacturing. And we thank Norm very much for the lend of his Sprint 8 for our recent podcasts.
Thanks for the chat.
So, yeah, any other further questions or comments or cars you'd like us to cover in the future, let us know. See you next time.